It was a tense morning on Capitol Hill. The House Oversight Committee had convened for what was expected to be a routine hearing on government transparency. But something in the air felt different. Reporters packed the gallery, their eyes shifting between two women seated at opposite ends of the panel. Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General and conservative firebrand, and Jasmine Crockett, the rising Democratic congresswoman from Texas known for her sharp wit and unapologetic rhetoric. Bondi had been invited as an expert witness, expected to deliver testimony on judicial overreach. Crockett, a vocal member of the committee, had already clashed with several Republican members in recent sessions. The tension between the two had been building for weeks on social media. Subtle jabs, cryptic posts, even late-night interviews laced with veiled threats. What no one knew, not the press, not the staffers, not even the chairman, was that Bondi had come armed with something more than legal notes and talking points. She had a folder. Inside it, according to sources close to Bondi's legal team, were documents that had the potential to not only embarrass Representative Crockett, but to jeopardize her entire career. And within the next 30 seconds, everything was going to change. As Bondi adjusted her microphone, the room hushed. She leaned forward, voice calm but cutting. "Before I begin my official remarks," she said, eyes locked on Crockett, "I believe it's in the public's interest to address a matter of integrity." Crockett shifted in her seat, her expression unreadable. The rest of the room froze. Bondi held up the folder, then slowly opened it. Inside were several highlighted emails, financial disclosures, and what appeared to be an internal memo from a nonprofit organization tied to Crockett's former legal advocacy group. She placed a few printed pages onto the committee table. "These documents," Bondi said, "detail a series of payments made to entities connected to Representative Crockett's campaign, payments funneled through nonprofits that received federal grants. There's a troubling overlap between these funds and her recent policy votes." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Crockett raised her hand to speak, but Bondi continued, "It's not just about influence. There's evidence suggesting that Ms. Crockett was directly involved in steering grant applications to these organizations while receiving private benefits in return." The chairman tried to interject, but it was too late. Reporters were already typing. Cameras zoomed in. The words "conflict of interest" and "federal investigation" had entered the bloodstream of Washington like wildfire. Bondi delivered the final blow with a single line. "This isn't personal, it's about trust. And I think the American people deserve answers now." In less than 30 seconds, the entire hearing had shifted from a debate over oversight to a public indictment of Crockett's ethics. And her reaction would decide what came next. The room was electric with tension. Jasmine Crockett sat stone-faced for a moment, scanning the documents Bondi had laid out like a trap. Then, with the composure of a seasoned litigator, she leaned into her microphone. "I appreciate the drama, Ms. Bondi," she began, her tone smooth but edged with fire. "But before we start writing headlines, let's talk facts." Crockett reached under the desk and retrieved her own folder. She slid several stapled packets across the table to the committee clerk. "Those so-called evidences have already been reviewed by the House Ethics Office. Twice. They found no wrongdoing, no violations, and no reason to investigate further. But you already knew that, didn't you?" The room shifted. A few eyebrows raised. Bondi didn't flinch, but the flicker in her eyes didn't go unnoticed. Crockett continued, voice rising just enough. "This isn't a legal argument, it's a political hit job. A distraction. While real issues go unaddressed, you're here recycling old, discredited accusations to score a headline." Then came the kicker. "And by the way," she said, flipping to a specific page in her binder, "your whistleblower behind these documents? He's a disgraced former aide of mine, terminated for misconduct and under active investigation for falsifying financial records." A murmur rippled across the room. "So if you want to talk about credibility, let's talk about yours." Bondi didn't respond. For the first time that morning, she looked unsettled. Crockett had taken a hit, but she hadn't crumbled. Not yet. Within minutes of the exchange, clips from the hearing were everywhere. Twitter, cable news, YouTube, even TikTok. The hashtag Bondi versus Crockett trended nationally before the session had even ended. News outlets split fast. Conservative media hailed Bondi's move as a courageous act of truth-telling, while progressive commentators painted it as a desperate smear campaign. Analysts on both sides agreed on one thing: this wasn't just a skirmish. It was a political moment. But the real chaos unfolded behind closed doors. Crockett's communications team scrambled into damage control mode, issuing statements, booking her on primetime interviews, and releasing documents that backed her version of events. Meanwhile, Democratic leadership met in hushed conference rooms, weighing whether the issue had any real legal legs, or if it was pure political theater. On the other side, Bondi was already making rounds on conservative talk shows, presenting herself as a whistleblower protector and guardian of government ethics. Her team leaked additional documents, some previously unseen, suggesting the issue ran deeper than originally thought. She hinted at more revelations to come. Back in Texas, Crockett's district office was flooded with both hate mail and support. Constituents demanded answers, but also rallied online with the defiant slogan, "You don't silence Crockett." And then came the unexpected twist. Late that evening, an anonymous source within a federal agency leaked that an official inquiry was indeed being opened, not into Crockett's finances, but into the origin of the documents Bondi had introduced. There were questions about forgery, about manipulation, about motive. The firestorm had engulfed both women, and neither could walk away unscathed. 1 week later, Washington was still reeling. The headlines had shifted, but the damage had been done. Jasmine Crockett stood before a bank of microphones outside the Capitol, her voice steady but steeled by the pressure of the past few days. "I welcome any investigation," she declared, "because the truth isn't something I run from, it's what I fight for. Always has been, always will be." Her approval ratings had dipped slightly, but not collapsed. In fact, some polls showed a surge of support among younger and progressive voters, who viewed the incident as yet another attempt to silence outspoken women of color in Congress. Her appearances on late-night shows and political podcasts had gone viral, and her fundraising numbers spiked dramatically. Bondi, meanwhile, found herself on shakier ground. While she continued to defend her actions, the federal inquiry into the source of her documents had grown louder. Allegations surfaced that parts of the evidence she presented had been selectively edited. A former aide from a conservative think tank, once considered her ally, publicly claimed he had warned her the documents were questionable. Political allies began to distance themselves. Quietly. Strategically. And when the House Ethics Committee issued a preliminary statement confirming no immediate wrongdoing by Representative Crockett, it signaled a turning point. The bombshell Bondi had dropped hadn't ended Crockett's career. It had unintentionally amplified it. In interviews, Crockett admitted the ordeal had taken a toll. "Politics isn't for the faint of heart," she said, "but if they think a staged attack is enough to take me down, they're not ready for what I'm about to build." Bondi, once riding high on conservative platforms, now faced calls to explain her role in a failed smear attempt that had backfired spectacularly. In the end, the 30-second drama had become a defining political saga, one that reminded the nation just how quickly power can shift, and how, in today's political arena, a takedown attempt can sometimes spark a rise instead. Months passed. The headlines faded. New controversies emerged, new hearings were scheduled, and Washington, as always, moved on. But something had changed. Jasmine Crockett wasn't just surviving, she was ascending. What began as a potential scandal had transformed her into a national figure. She was now a frequent guest on major news networks, invited to speak at leadership summits, and rumored to be on the shortlist for a prominent committee chair. Her voice, once considered too bold for the mainstream, had become a rallying cry for a new generation of Democrats tired of playing defense. She was fundraising at record levels. Strategists whispered that she had the makings of a future Senate run, or even something higher. Behind the scenes, Crockett had grown more strategic, more focused. She built alliances carefully, choosing not to seek revenge against Bondi but instead to turn the episode into a lesson about misinformation, political weaponization, and the importance of verifying sources. Meanwhile, Pam Bondi's influence had waned. Though she remained a fixture on certain conservative platforms, her credibility had taken a hit. The inquiry into her handling of the documents concluded without criminal charges, but with a scathing rebuke over her reckless presentation of unverified materials. Her name no longer carried the same political weight it once did, and her ambitions for higher office quietly disappeared from the conversation. Ironically, Bondi had done exactly what she set out to do: shake up the political status quo. She just hadn't expected to elevate her opponent in the process. As the dust settled on the explosive confrontation, Washington's political landscape began to shift in subtle but unmistakable ways. What initially looked like a career-ending strike against Jasmine Crockett had, instead, triggered a cascade of changes that reverberated far beyond the walls of the Capitol. For Crockett, the ordeal was more than a trial by fire, it was a defining moment that reshaped her political identity. She emerged not only vindicated but emboldened, using the controversy as a platform to champion transparency, accountability, and the fight against misinformation in politics. Her speeches began to focus less on partisan rhetoric and more on systemic reforms, protecting whistleblowers, tightening ethical guidelines, and enhancing government oversight. Her newfound national profile translated into political capital. Invitations to speak at major policy forums and leadership summits grew. Key progressive organizations rallied behind her, seeing her as a symbol of resilience and integrity. Crockett's fundraising efforts soared, drawing support from a broad coalition of grassroots activists, young voters, and influential donors eager to back a candidate unafraid to confront powerful interests. Meanwhile, the episode sent ripples through the conservative ranks. Pam Bondi's aggressive tactics, once lauded as bold and uncompromising, were scrutinized and criticized even among her former allies. The internal inquiry into the origin and authenticity of the documents she used exposed vulnerabilities and raised questions about the ethical lines in political warfare. While Bondi retained a loyal base, her stature diminished, and whispers of fading influence grew louder in political circles. The scandal also sparked a broader conversation about the weaponization of information in the digital age. Media outlets and watchdog groups intensified their calls for better fact-checking, transparency, and safeguards against the spread of manipulated documents and false narratives. Lawmakers on both sides began drafting bipartisan legislation aimed at curbing disinformation campaigns and holding public figures accountable for the materials they present. Behind the scenes, Crockett's team worked meticulously to convert momentum into concrete gains. She forged new alliances across ideological lines, understanding that lasting change required coalition building beyond party politics. She focused on policy areas that resonated with her constituents: criminal justice reform, voting rights, and economic opportunity, while remaining vigilant against future attempts to undermine her credibility. Pam Bondi, for her part, retreated from the national spotlight. While she continued to comment on political affairs, her ambitions for higher office were quietly shelved. The controversy had marked a turning point, one that underscored the risks of using aggressive tactics without airtight evidence. Her story became a cautionary tale in political strategy circles: how a well-planned strike can backfire spectacularly. The clash between Bondi and Crockett ultimately illustrated a timeless truth of politics: power is never static. One moment of confrontation can redefine careers, alliances, and even political movements. It showcased the resilience of those willing to fight back against adversity and the peril faced by those who gamble recklessly with trust and truth. As Jasmine Crockett looked toward the future, her eyes were set firmly on expanding her influence, not just as a survivor of scandal, but as a leader poised to reshape the political game. The battlefield had changed, and so had she. The reverberations from the explosive confrontation between Pam Bondi and Jasmine Crockett didn't fade with time. Instead, they crystallized into a defining moment that would influence the tenor of American politics for years to come. In the months that followed, Jasmine Crockett transitioned from being a controversial figure on Capitol Hill to a prominent voice calling for reform in an era marked by misinformation and political polarization. Her experience had given her a unique perspective on the power and peril of narrative in modern politics. She became a staunch advocate for transparency, pushing legislation designed to enhance the integrity of government processes and to combat the weaponization of information that had nearly derailed her career. Her efforts garnered bipartisan support, surprising many observers accustomed to Washington's gridlock. Moderate Republicans, weary of the damage wrought by unchecked political attacks, found common ground with Crockett's proposals for stricter verification requirements on public disclosures and increased penalties for those who disseminated falsified documents. The bipartisan coalition she helped build became a model for navigating an often toxic political environment. Crockett's rising prominence did not go unnoticed by her constituents. Town halls were packed, social media engagement soared, and her grassroots fundraising network swelled with a new generation of voters energized by her story of resilience. She became a symbol of what some called the new politics: authentic, courageous, and unwilling to back down in the face of orchestrated attacks. Meanwhile, the fallout for Pam Bondi took a different trajectory. Although she maintained her base of conservative supporters, the broader political establishment began to distance itself from the tactics she employed. The inquiry into the origins of the documents she presented revealed troubling lapses in due diligence and ethics. While no criminal charges were filed, the official rebuke marked a significant stain on her legacy. Her influence waned, and attempts to leverage the controversy for further political advancement met with diminishing returns. Behind the scenes, strategists debated whether Bondi's approach had been a miscalculation. Using incendiary accusations without solid backing was a gamble that had cost her political capital and credibility. This saga also sparked a broader, ongoing debate about the role of media and technology in politics. News organizations intensified their fact-checking efforts. Social media platforms experimented with new tools to flag manipulated or misleading content, and civic groups launched campaigns to educate voters about the importance of source verification. The clash between Bondi and Crockett became a case study in how misinformation could be weaponized, and ultimately how truth could prevail through persistence and transparency. On a cultural level, the episode highlighted the challenges faced by women, especially women of color, in the political arena. Crockett's ability to stand firm in the face of targeted attacks inspired many, reshaping conversations around representation, resilience, and the systemic obstacles embedded in the political system. Politically, the incident became a touchstone for discussions about ethics reforms and accountability. Congressional committees revisited their rules on evidence presentation and witness credibility, seeking to prevent future hearings from devolving into spectacle or character assassination. As the political dust settled, both women found their paths irrevocably altered. Jasmine Crockett embraced her role as a transformative leader, with ambitions that extended well beyond her initial district. Pam Bondi, reflecting on the fallout, became a cautionary figure, her story a reminder of the high stakes and swift consequences of political brinkmanship. In the grand narrative of American politics, the Bondi-Crockett clash served as a microcosm of the era's complexities, the interplay of power, truth, identity, and strategy in a landscape forever changed by technology and social media. It underscored that in modern politics, every moment is fraught with risk, and every move can redefine the future. The aftermath of the explosive confrontation between Pam Bondi and Jasmine Crockett sent shockwaves far beyond their immediate circles, triggering a chain reaction that altered the political landscape in unexpected ways. Election seasons redefined. In the election cycles that followed, candidates across the country took note of the high-stakes battle on Capitol Hill. For Democrats, Crockett's rise became a blueprint for harnessing controversy into momentum. Her ability to turn a near-career-ending attack into a springboard energized candidates who had previously feared the brutal glare of negative campaigning. Campaigns increasingly focused on transparency, resilience, and authenticity, qualities Crockett had embodied in the aftermath of the scandal. Republicans, on the other hand, grappled with lessons from Bondi's misfire. While aggressive tactics remained a staple of their playbook, party strategists urged caution, emphasizing the importance of thorough vetting before launching public accusations. The incident sparked internal debates over the balance between zeal and prudence, reshaping messaging strategies for contentious races. Shifting alliances and power dynamics. The political realignments following the clash were subtle but meaningful. Within the Democratic Party, Crockett's enhanced profile allowed her to broker alliances across different factions, from progressives to moderates. Her emphasis on bipartisan cooperation against misinformation earned her respect among lawmakers who previously viewed her as too confrontational. Meanwhile, in conservative circles, some of Bondi's former allies distanced themselves, seeking to recalibrate their approaches to avoid the fallout she endured. This opened space for new voices and emerging leaders to step in, reshaping the party's internal dynamics. Legislative momentum. Inspired by the incident's revelations about the weaponization of documents and the risks of misinformation, several key pieces of legislation gained traction. Bills aimed at strengthening ethical standards for public officials, improving transparency in campaign financing, and enhancing protections for whistleblowers moved forward with bipartisan support. Crockett herself emerged as a leading sponsor of some of these initiatives, leveraging her personal experience to highlight the urgent need for reform. Her advocacy helped elevate the conversation beyond partisan divides, framing the issue as central to the health of American democracy. Public discourse and voter engagement. The saga also influenced public discourse, sparking widespread conversations about political ethics, media literacy, and the role of social media in shaping perceptions. Civic organizations launched voter education campaigns emphasizing critical thinking and source verification, aiming to empower citizens to navigate an increasingly complex information environment. Voter turnout in districts affected by similar controversies saw modest increases, as constituents felt a renewed urgency to participate in shaping their political futures. Looking to the future. As new election cycles approached, both Bondi and Crockett faced divergent futures shaped by their roles in the controversy. Crockett's trajectory pointed upward. With growing name recognition and a reputation for resilience, she was considered a strong contender for statewide office, and political analysts speculated about a potential Senate bid. Her campaign focused on unity, reform, and a forward-looking vision that sought to heal partisan divides. Bondi's path was more uncertain. While she remained a respected voice among certain conservative audiences, her national ambitions were curtailed. Some predicted a pivot toward media commentary or advocacy work outside elected office, while others saw her eventual retirement from frontline politics as inevitable. A lasting lesson. Ultimately, the clash between Pam Bondi and Jasmine Crockett served as a powerful reminder of the volatility and unpredictability of political life. It underscored how a single moment, just 30 seconds, can alter careers, shift power balances, and redefine narratives. In the fast-paced world of modern politics, where information spreads instantly and stakes are higher than ever, the saga illuminated the importance of integrity, preparation, and the courage to face adversity head-on. As the nation watched, the Bondi Crockett story became more than a headline. It became a catalyst for change, a cautionary tale, and a testament to the enduring resilience of those who refused to be silenced. Years after that fateful hearing, the political duel between Pam Bondi and Jasmine Crockett had become a defining chapter in both their careers, and a case study in the power of resilience, strategy, and consequence. Jasmine Crockett's legacy. Crockett had transformed from a relatively unknown congresswoman into a national figure embodying a new era of political leadership. Her ability to withstand a targeted attack, then turn it into momentum for reform, inspired a generation of activists and politicians alike. She became a leading advocate for ethical governance and transparency, credited with advancing legislation that strengthened protections against misinformation and political sabotage. Her story was frequently cited in political science courses, leadership seminars, and media analyses as an example of how courage and composure in crisis can redefine a career. Crockett's impact extended beyond policy. She became a symbol of empowerment, especially for women and minorities navigating the challenging world of politics. Pam Bondi's reflection. For Bondi, the episode marked both a peak and a turning point. Once a powerful force in conservative politics, her influence gradually receded after the inquiry exposed flaws in her approach. Though she remained active as a commentator and advocate, she acknowledged that the controversy had taught her hard lessons about the limits of political warfare. In interviews, Bondi spoke candidly about the experience, its costs, its surprises, and the unexpected ways it reshaped her perspective. She became a cautionary figure, reminding political operatives of the risks involved when truth and ambition collide. The broader impact. The Bondi Crockett saga left an indelible mark on American politics. It sparked critical reforms aimed at increasing accountability and protecting public trust. Media outlets and social platforms improved fact-checking and transparency policies, recognizing the dangers of unchecked misinformation. Most importantly, the story underscored a timeless truth. In politics, power is fragile, reputations are hard-earned, and integrity is a currency more valuable than any campaign fund. Looking forward. As new leaders rise and the political battlefield evolves, the legacy of Bondi and Crockett serves as both a warning and an inspiration. It reminds us that moments of crisis can either destroy or define us, and that the choices we make in those moments reverberate far beyond the headlines.